Yo friends, what's up? Today I want to show you how you can ruin a Svelte store. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, here I made this motion library so we can define a tween for values that we wouldn't usually be able to animate, such as SVGs, canvas, and etc. So here I define a camera, circle, text, and etc. And now I can use this nice API to even include sounds. So I can use .to and I can animate these values over time, including any numbers and even strings like colors. So this is really cool, right? And then here's how I use it. So you can just subscribe it because this is a store, right? So I can just say camera.x, and here's how it looks like in practice. How beautiful is this, friends? And this is also used as a part of my other library Animotion, which is used to visualize ideas with code using the web technologies that you know and love, right? So here, even if we go to the docs, we can actually see, for example, here we have these simple transitions that work like magic, right? So we can just say Animotion and then we can animate whatever we want. And it works really beautifully using the View Transitions API. But motion is the missing piece for animating these values over time. So as a part of the Animotion template, I include Animotion/motion if you want to do that, right? So we can animate values over time like this, and this works beautifully. Alright, but what is the actual problem? And the problem is that since I switched this entire project Animotion to Svelte 5, right, now we have some inconsistencies. People might be confused, like because we're using runes or signals now we have to explain to people what this weird $sign means, etc. So I really thought it would be really fun to actually go together through how to take a Svelte store, so something that we don't have control over, because, for example, let me just show you. If I go to tween, you can actually see that under the hood, this is just using tween from Svelte Motion. I'm going to show you how you can use something you have no control over, such as an external store from a library, and how you can runify it, so you can turn it into a rune store. But before we get started, here's a message from our sponsor. I'd like to thank this video sponsor, you, the viewer. You can support the channel through Patreon or a YouTube channel membership. Members get early access to videos, help shape the content, and a special Discord role. You can find all of the links in the description. Thank you for your support. Alright, but before we get started, let me give you a quick recap on Svelte 5 runes if you've been living under a rock. So here we can say let count, and then we can say $state. We can define our state like this. Boom, bam, thank you, ma'am. We can also say double, and we can say derived, and now we can pass in a simple expression, and that's basically it. You don't have to do anything else in Svelte 5. This is all you need to know, and this makes things so much simpler. And some people complain, for example, they lose their goddamn mind when they see effect. They're like, oh, React. And this is honestly a really sad state of affairs, because people have no idea how the framework works. They see some surface level API that reminds them of something else, and they're like, oh, this is bad. And what do you think in Tarnation? What was this in Svelte 4? Does this look familiar, right? What do you think you've been using this entire time? They actually almost work the same, but of course effects have other things like replacing lifecycle methods, so you have to write less things and you only know one thing, and that is the beauty of Svelte 5. It's simpler and more powerful than before. But let me actually show you what you're going to do today. And if you didn't know, let me show you something cool. So for example, for backwards compatibility, that's also another awesome thing about Svelte 5. It's actually mind-boggling to me that it's completely backwards compatible with older versions of Svelte, and it's a completely new rewrite, right? So for example, you might be familiar with good old stores. So instead of state here, we can actually use a writable. Now let me show you something cool. This works with runes. Incredible. Boom. We can do this. Let me just console log double. Open the developer tools, and you can see it works. Let's change it to 10. Then we're going to see here it's 20, right? And this is absolute magic. But how does this actually work? Well, under the hood, Svelte actually just subscribes to the store and proxies the value through a rune, right? Or a signal. And this is basically what it does. Let me show you. So let me actually just remove this. And this is a writable, right? So we can, for example, let's say proxy. And this is actually what Svelte does under the hood. It subscribes to this, gets the latest value, and then whenever these stores update, it's just going to reassign it to this proxy, and this is what gets returned. This is why this works. And this is actually the same technique that we're going to use today to make a ruined Svelte store. As you can see, we can go here, and we can console log this proxy, and we can see we're going to get 10. How beautiful is this, friends? Alright, but let me close this for now, and then we're going to go to the code, right? So we can continue. Alright, but before we get started, there are actually a couple of things I hate about this library. So for example, I assume here that this is an MP3, which is completely stupid, so I actually want to make this explicit, that you have to specify the file type for the audio, because you can actually play anything, right? So this was really silly of me. So another thing I hate about this is that I'm using a wait here as a requirement for playing the animation. I just want to play the animation by default, and if I want to wait for an animation to finish, then I can just use a wait. And then I also, because I did this, there are also some mental gymnastics here, like using this all to combine this in a promise and play these things both at the same time. And this is how things work by default, right? So I'm actually doing more work for nothing. Another thing that I was super fixated by was chaining methods. So for example, you can just chain these methods how many times you want, and I was really obsessed with this. I was like, oh my god, I need to have method chaining is so cool, oh my god, I need to have method chaining, and it's kind of really useless, to be honest. So let me actually show you, at least it's cool how it works though, so let me actually show you. So for example, if we go back here at tween, and let me actually show you. Alright, so a question to you, how can you chain promises, right? So I push this to a task queue, but then how do you chain them, right? How do you play these animations? And the trick is to make this object denable. If you return den from an object, which we're returning here, right? We're returning this. This is a special thing in JavaScript, how you can make things denable, right? So I'm looping over the task, I'm awaiting every task, then I'm going to resolve them, and then I'm going to clear the task queue. And this is something really super interesting in my opinion. And this is the reason why we have to await the animations, because when you use a denable, it's only going to run when you await it, because it's a promise, right? But I actually don't find it that useful, so this is something that you're going to remove. Alright, boom, gone, later. Okay, so now we can also remove it from here, and then we're not going to have any task, so let's just delete this. I want to return this from sound effects because we're going to do a sound effect and then we're going to chain two. And yeah, we can just keep this as is, nothing bad here, right? Boom. Alright, so we're not going to need task also here in the reset, and we also push task here. Let me just remove this. And then I'm going to remove this because we're not going to chain two anymore, right? So if I save, it's going to format. And another thing that we can do, because tweenable from Svelte returns a promise, we can actually return it. So we can say return update and return here. And let's just remove this. So I'm going to take the set. Boom, just going to move this out of here. And that's how easy peasy lemon squeezy that is. Alright, so now we're going to return this. So now we can await the animation if we want, and it's going to play by default. And let's see if I have to do anything else. Let's just remove the task here. We don't need this. Boom. Now we just delete things. Beautiful. Alright, so now going back here, you can actually see we get some warnings here, and that's great. So we don't need all here anymore. So let's see what we want to do in this animation. We just want to await the camera first. We're going to play the sound effect. We're going to animate this. Okay, so that should be awaited, right? And we can do this as is. And here we can just, we don't even need to await here this text. We can just put the sound effect right here because we're returning this, right? Boom. So we can change sound effect to boom. And we can just use text here. So much simpler. We don't need chaining. Everything is going to be all right, right? So let's just save this and refresh for good measure. And let's see. And let me see, did I interact with the page? Oh yeah, I didn't fix this problem that I wanted to fix with the audio, right? So we can go here and we can see I just always assume that this is an MP3. Boom. Let's fix this, and now this is already a lot better in my opinion. Alright, so let me just go here, refresh. How beautiful is this, friends? Alright, so let's get to the fun part. And the first thing we actually have to do, we have to rename tween.ts to tween.svelte.ts. And this is something you have to do when you use runes outside of a Svelte component, so the compiler has to do less work. Alright, so let's do that. We can say reveal, this is going to teleport us where we need to be. And now we can rename this through this comically absurd long context menu. What the heck is this? Okay, svelte.ts, boom, that's it. Do we want to update imports? Yes, please. Boom, easy peasy, lemon squeezy like that, friends. We can just close this. And let's actually see, we didn't save this. Boom, and now everything works the same as before. We just renamed the file, but yeah, that's basically it. And let me just go here and back to our tween.svelte.ts file now. Okay, so how are we going to refactor this? I'm using a function here, but I'm in a class kind of mood because what can I say? I'm a classy kind of guy, right? So let's just use a class, and then later we can actually wrap the class in a tween function just so we don't have to use the new keyword, right? Let's say class tween. Easy peasy lemon squeezy like that. So let's see what we accept, values and options. I actually want to rename this to value and option. That's it, boom. And we're going to have a couple of things here, actually two things I believe. So we're going to have value, and this is another beautiful thing about Svelte 5. So you can declare your state here. You can use $state, $derive. It's just going to work. Under hood, Svelte is going to actually compile this to a getter and setter, so you don't have to think about this yourself. And if you want more control, you can define the getter and setter yourself, which is really beautiful. But of course, you don't have to use a class. Use a function, whatever floats your boat, right? And then we're also going to have a private field store because it doesn't make sense that we can access this outside of the class, but it really doesn't matter, right? All right, so now we can go into our constructor. We can say this value is going to equal the value that we passed. And then we're just going to assign the store here. Let's just go here and we can yoink this store. That's it. We don't have to do anything special. And let's just also rename these values to value. Now we can pass in a generic here because this is the type. I'm just going to say st here. It's going to be t. We have an options type. Boom, that's it. And if you aren't familiar with TypeScript, t is basically just like an argument function, but for types, because we have no idea ahead of time what the type is going to be. So we're just going to say t. And let's also make this optional since we don't have to pass this. And that's basically it, right? So now what we have to do, we actually have to do the same trick. We have to subscribe to the store and then we're going to update the value. And we can do this here. So we can say this store, subscribe now. When we get the latest value, we're going to say this value equals value. That's it. And now we basically made a ruined store. And let's just do some other things here. So we have this to function, we have sound effects, reset, and etc. So let me actually just take those. Let's see, is that it? Okay, let's just copy them over side of our beautiful class. And okay, since this is a method, we don't need this. And this is also a great thing. Now I don't have to use and type this here. This is what I hate about TypeScript, that you have to define this as an argument like this. But inside of a class, you don't have to. And let's see what it's complaining about. It's complaining about this too. So we have reset. Okay. And now we can say this store set. So we don't have to think about this. This dot value. Let's see, what is it mad about? Oh, we also have this. We can also turn this into a method. We can remove this. And let's see if anything else here. Yeah, so we can also say here where it's update. We can say this store dot update. Just copy this over. Yeah, and that's basically it. So now we rewrote this part. And I also think that this part is a bit ugly. I prefer to have my code more readable. Yeah, so we can just go here. Let's just return this. We can save, so we get auto formatting, right? So we just made this simple, beautiful class. Classes aren't anything spooky, right? They're just fancy objects on steroids. And actually, let me just rename values to value. And we can also rename to options to just be options. That's it. This is going to be value. All right, so now we check if value is of type object, then we're actually going to use update just so we preserve these values. Because, for example, you can pass in something like, let's say that you have a value x0, y0, and I actually don't want it to be annoying, so you have to do this each time when you want to update it. So you have to say this is 0, this is 10. No, you can just do this. You can just pass only the value that you want to update, so y10, and then it's going to just spread the old values. That's basically what this is doing, nothing special, right? And this is also going to otherwise just set the value. That's it, if we have a single digit like a number. I think all of this looks great to me. And we can actually go here. Let me just delete this since we don't need all of this. Boom. And let's just, this is the actual thing we're going to export. Export function tween. Again, we're going to save the same value. So let's just make this t. Option t. Or options. That's it. And then we're just going to return new tween. I'm going to pass in the value and options. All right, and that's basically it for this. And let's also pass the t here. Okay, so let's see if all of this looks right. Yeah, so we have this class tween. Okay, good. So now we're going back here. Just remove this since we don't need this. And now we can refresh. And then we get this error because we're no longer using a store, right? So let's see what we have here in the code. All right, this looks great. All right, so now we can just change this. And now we have to say .value because we're accessing this from value. But we're actually going to see, I'm going to show you how you can actually make this a nicer user experience. Cool, so let me just refresh for good measures, no errors, looking good. How beautiful is this, friends? Alright, so before we improve the user experience, let me actually just tell you one more thing, and that is, for example, Let me just see, where was it? Oh, also we don't have to return else here. There's no point since you're already returning. We can just say return, boom, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Alright, so another thing, we didn't account here, so we're subscribing, but we never unsubscribe here from the store. So if you want, for example, you can use an effect here. We'll just return. So now we're returning a cleanup function. So when the component unmounts, it's going to also unsubscribe from this, because the Svelte store returns an unsubscribe function. So you can actually see everything works the same as before. And also what you can do, because effects run last, you can use effect.pre to subscribe to this store immediately, right? And basically this works the same. Alright, so how can we improve the user experience? And the current problem that we have, if we define cores, for example, new tween, and then we pass x0 and y0, we can set x to 10, but the problem right now, first we have to say cores, and then we have to access value on the class, and then we can get to our precious property, right? But what I want to do, I just want to be able to say cores.x or whatever property I want, and even optionally, we can also say cores.x, and we can assign it like this. So how can we do that? Well, we can use getters and setters. And to do this, it's actually not that complicated, right? We can actually create dynamic getters and setters based on our values. So here we get the value, we can check if this is an object. So let's do this right now. We can say if type of this value equals object. You can do a better check because this can also be an array, but for right now, let's just loop over those values. So we're going to say key in value, and we're going to use object, and we're going to define the property on this object, and it accepts 3 values. So the target, the key that you want to set, and then we can create an object on it with a getter and a setter. So in this case, the object that you want to change is our class. So we just have to say this, that's it. So now the key that you want to create is the key that you're looping over. That's how easy peasy lemon squeezy this is, friends. So now we can define a getter, and optionally you can also define a setter here. So you get the newest value, and now you can update whatever you want, right? But in this case, I just want to make these values read only. Cool. So now we can do this, and now we're going to return. We're going to say this value, and we're going to return the property on the object. That's how easy peasy lemon squeezy this is, friends. And we can also abstract this a bit further. We can say set properties, pass in a value, which is t, and then we're going to do the same thing, and here we're just going to say this set properties, this value. Boom. Let's save everything. Okay, nothing broke, and we can also enhance our types, so we can say as, let's pass in the generic, but there's one problem here, is that we won't get the types for the values that we pass. So we can actually just do this. So we can say and then we can just say t. So it's going to include all of our object properties. How easy peasy lemon squeezy is this, friends? All right, so let me save, and everything was the same as before, right? Beautiful, right? But now we can actually create a better user experience. We can remove all of this dot value nonsense, and we get the same as before, right? Let me just do this in one fell swoop. Let me see. Boom. Let me save this, and look how much more beautiful this already looks. Yeah, absolute beauty, friends, right? So we can actually just go here and let's see, refresh for good measure. How beautiful is this, friends? Okay, friends, that's it. But let me know if you're interested in a follow-up video where we implement tween from scratch. And I think it would be really fascinating because we can learn how we can animate values over time, we can learn how easing works, and etc. And this is basically how it works in Svelte. Here we have this interpolate function, which interpolates between 2 values based on the animation progress. But yeah, basically let me know what you think, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.